Hello. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning, Daemen College. Oh, it's a better morning than that. Good morning. There we are. First, Mr. President, I remind you of Mario Cuomo, huh? Here's a novel idea. I wonder why. Mario Cuomo had those big bags under his eyes. He had a big nose. He was always pale. Do I really remind you of Mario Cuomo? No. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for having us here today. And I thought it was especially gracious of the President to say any students who are here today will get 5 extra point credit for being here today. So let's give him a big round of applause. President Annisman. Budget Director Bob Megna. I don't think you need a stylist, Bob. I think you have that sort of rumple genius look, doesn't he? He does it well, that little academic sort of look. Bob does have the hardest job in state government. He's the budget director, and there is no money. So it is always a very tough position. And everybody wants money. But he's done an extraordinary job. He's been very kind to me because I'm the new kid on the block. I've only been there about a month, and it's been a month of a lot of intensity, let's say. I think that's a fair word, intensity. So let's thank the budget director for his great work on behalf of the state of New York. All my colleagues who are here from the Assembly and the Senate, we work together. I want to thank them very much. I want to thank Assemblyman Jim Hayes and your Senator Mike Rosenhofer for being here today and for their kind words and their support of this concept. The Assemblyman, the Senator, and I are from different political parties. I'm not going to tell you who's from what party, but we are from different parties. But we are all working on the same goal, which is to get the state of New York running again and to get this budget passed and to make Albany work. And I think that's important. And I'm working consciously to depoliticize the dialogue and depoliticize the debate. Why? Because too much of Albany, in my opinion, has become partisan and political. And it's about Democrats and it's about Republicans. It's not supposed to be about Democrats and Republicans. It's supposed to be about the people of the state of New York. That's what it's supposed to be about, you know. And I always got a kick out of watching when you would have these votes. It happens in Washington, but it certainly happens in Albany also. And you'd have a vote, and all the Democrats would vote one way, and all the Republicans would vote another way. Whatever the issue was, it could be a totally obscure issue. What color should we paint the door? You know, all the Democrats want one color, all the Republicans want another color. It can't be. Statistically, it is impossible that all the Democrats always agree with all the Democrats, and all the Republicans always agree with all the Republicans. What it says is they are really voting their party ideology. That's what it is. They're not voting the substance. They're not voting the merits. They're not reading that bill and deciding what's better for their district, right? They're saying, what does the leadership of their party tell them to do? That has to change. That has to change this year. The people of the state of New York come first because we're Democrats, we're Republicans, we're independents, but we're New Yorkers first, and we have to act that way. I did do, as you heard from the Assemblyman, my budget presentation this week. The budget is a very important document because it puts the numbers to the vision for the state, especially this budget, because it's a critical budget. It's a difficult budget at a difficult time. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to come out today and allow me to present you the same budget because I think it's important that we all understand it and we all have a voice in the discussion. I've been in office for 1 month. It has been a very long month, I want you to know. I did not have any gray hair when I started this job 1 month ago. I now have many. I come to office with 3 goals, which are the 3 goals that the people of the state of New York elected me to perform. Number 1, to clean up Albany, to make it work, to give you a government that you can be proud of, to restore integrity to Albany, to stop the corruption, stop the scandals. Number 2, to balance the budget. and bring fiscal discipline, those two words, to Albany, to do it without raising taxes, and third, to get the economy running again, because it's all about government facilitating the creation of jobs. That is the number one goal for all of us. I believe that this state truly is at a crossroads, and I think these decisions that we make at this point in time are going to lead this state down one road or another for many, many years to come. With that in mind, this is a very different type of budget plan. A budget is normally about numbers. This one isn't. This is about values, it's about choices, and it's about directions. Here's my first profound economic statement. We spend too much money. After spending a month going through the state budget, that is my educated conclusion. Not only do we spend too much money, we spend money that is unsustainable, and we spend more money than we make. You look at the state spending over the past 10 years, we spend at an average of 5.7% per year. Tax receipts are how much we bring in. It's how much the state collects. We only collect 3.8%, and we're spending 5.7%. The families of the state, personal income growth is 3.7%. So we're spending more money as the state government than the state government is bringing in, and we're spending more money than the people of the state are making. We're also spending twice the rate of inflation. And inflation is supposed to be a national index of basically what the economy is going up. So that profound economic point, you can't spend more money than you make. There are only two groups of people who don't understand this. Number one is the leadership of the New York State Legislature. Number two are my daughters. The good news is my daughters are coming around. But this chart in many ways says it all. This level of spending is just unsustainable. This is not a new story. We've been spending too much money in state government in Albany for too long. Because we spend too much, we tax too much. $4,800, New York's per capita state and local tax burden, 66% above the U.S. average, ranking worst among states. Which means what? Which means today, when businesses are more mobile than ever before, when people are more mobile than ever before, they will leave. And they will shop a better state and a better venue. The businesses are no longer cemented into the foundation, right? Today they can close their laptop and get on a plane and move, and they will. When you look at the property tax burden, on top of that, 96% higher than the U.S. average. And this has gotten us into the vicious cycle that we're in New York. Businesses leave, people leave, there's less revenue, so we have to raise taxes. The more you raise taxes, the more businesses leave, the more people leave. 2 million people have left the state of New York, and this negative cycle, this negative synergy is continuing. Well, you could say, you know what? We spend a lot of money, but we get a lot for it, so it balances out. You could say that, but you'd be wrong. We're number one in spending in the United States in terms of education. We're number 34 in terms of results, believe it or not. We're number one in spending in something they call the Medicaid Program. We're number 21 in terms of results. We spend $1.6 billion on economic development, and we rank dead last in the country. This is a shame. Why does it happen? Well, when you pull back the curtain on state government in Albany, you find that the special interests are really pulling the strings that are operating state government. Albany budgeting is Albany meets Enron, in my opinion. I spent 4 years as Attorney General, and as Attorney General, I spent a lot of time uncovering shams and scams in different areas. I spent a lot of time looking at the healthcare industry. I don't know if you remember the case where we found out that all health insurance companies were using one data company, and that data company was determining what the reimbursement rates were for people. And this has gone on for 15 years. And everybody knew it, and nobody said anything about it. We uncovered it, we disclosed it, and we ended it. We did investigations on Wall Street and found out that they were just manipulating the value of homes and the prediction of the home values to manipulate the mortgage market. And this went on. I saw manipulation in the student loans. I'm telling you now as governor, there is a similar sham, which is the special interests manipulating and controlling their own industry through the state government. The budget in the state is driven by rates and formulas in law that give certain groups and industries unsustainable annual increases. It's a lot of words and a lot of technical words, but that is the essence of our problem. Rates that are influenced by special interests and the lobbyists that dominate Albany. So, for example, two of the two largest programs the state operates are Medicaid and education. The law dictates how Medicaid grows and how education grows. State passes a budget that certifies those laws. When they passed the budget last year, what do you think the rate of inflation is for Medicaid and education, which are the two big programs? Okay, so they passed the budget last year. In this economic environment, you know what's going on. What do you think the state budget calls for as a rate of inflation? Maybe it's 4%, 5%, 6%, 7%. Believe it or not, a 13% increase in Medicaid, a 13% increase in education. That's what is in the state budget this year. You look at the increases that we've had the past few years, 16% last year, 14% the year before that. You look at what we're forecasting going forward, 13 and 9. You look at education going forward, 13 and 11%. Nothing, my friends, is increasing by these amounts. Rates of growth are unsustainable, they're unnecessary, and they are unjustifiable. It's a function of what's called the permanent government. There was a fellow, God bless him, Jack Newfield, passed away. He was a great reporter, wrote a book called The Permanent Government. And he made the point that often governments become entrenched and dominated by the special interest, and it has nothing to do with politics. It's not Democrats and Republicans, it's not their ideology. It's controlled by an industry class, an industry group. I've gotten to Albany. I was in Albany once before. As you heard from the president, I'm the son of Mario and Matilda Cuomo. And my father gets elected in 1982, and I went up as the special assistant to the governor, 23, 24 years old. I now come back as governor, 30-something years later. The same people who were there 30 years ago are there today. Same lobbyists, same special interests, same corporate presence, same people in the same hallways making the same point. That's the permanent government. That's what's controlling Albany. And they make political contributions to the politicians, and the politicians curry favor by incorporating their interests. That's the enemy. It's not Democrat versus Republican. It's the permanent government versus the people of the state of New York. That's what's really going on. What's even worse, all these rates of increase, 13% rate of increase, which is bizarre. I mean, just think about 13% rate of increase for a second. Does anyone have anything in their lives that's going up 13%? Anyone have a bank account that's going up 13%? Tell me I want to invest there. Anyone's home value going up 13%? Anyone banking on a 13% increase in their income? Now, only government thinks it's going to go up by 13%. But then when you look at the rates, they're not even tied to anything that has anything to do with the people of the state. They're not even tied to performance. You know, you look at the Medicaid increase. It doesn't talk about the patient. It doesn't talk about wellness. It doesn't talk about the success rates. The education funding, it doesn't talk about student achievement. It doesn't talk about graduation. They're just formulas in law that aid the special interests. Well, now it is a crisis because the economy has turned. We can't afford it anymore, and it has to stop now. We have to redesign the programs. We have to recalibrate our spending, and we have to focus on rebuilding this economy. First is going to be the Medicaid program. We assembled a redesigned team to rewrite the entire program, to focus on the patients, to focus on the people, rather than the special interests. The team is going across the state. They've already collected over 1,000 ideas. To give you an example of how the program works, fastest growing program in Medicaid is something called home health care. It's increased by 89% per recipient from 2003 to 2009. State pays an agency called the Certified Home Health Agency, $1, let's say. That agency gets 26% administrative overhead. That agency contracts with another agency called a Licensed Home Care Agency. That agency takes 26% administrative overhead. That agency then actually hires a person to provide the care, and that person gets 48 cents. 52 cents on the dollar. All administrative overhead. All about the bureaucracy, all about the infrastructure having nothing to do with the patient. That's what has to stop because we can't afford it any longer. We are going to have to recalibrate this year because the state does have a deficit. I pledged in my campaign that I would close the deficit without raising taxes. I'm not going to raise taxes, which means we're going to have to learn to live within our means, and we're going to have to recalibrate. The Medicaid program for the state of New York will go from $53 billion to $52 billion, which is a 2% decrease year to year. When people say, well, how can you do that, reduce Medicaid? When you look at the rate of growth in Medicaid, even factoring in the 2% reduction this year, the growth is still 5.7% per year compared to inflation, which is 2.3%. Going forward, we have to recalibrate the growth in Medicaid to a fair and objective standard. We can't stay here today and say it's going to increase 13% next year. I propose a new formula, which is indexed to healthcare CPI, which is a national formula, which works in all the other states. It can also work in New York, which is about 4% annually. I say to my colleagues who are here today, when you get back to Albany, please tell Senate Leader Dean Skelos and Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver, if they think they're going to give me a budget that says there's going to be a 13% increase in Medicaid and education next year, tell them don't bother sending me the budget because it will go right in the wastebasket. When it comes to education, I want to change our thinking. We now fund education by what's called a formula grant. School districts get a check from the government, and they get a set amount every year, regardless of the job they do. They do a great job, they get the same amount. They do a poor job, they get the same amount. If you believe in performance, you believe in competition, then fund competition. And fund the school districts that are doing a better job and reward those teachers and reward those principals. And let's find out what the school districts that are doing a better job are doing so we can emulate it in other parts of the state. I propose a $250 million grant program, which is a competition all across the state. School districts that have the greatest improvements in student performance would win these competitions. And the students would be rewarded, and the principals would be rewarded, and then we could emulate those models. I would also have a corresponding grant program, competitive program, for school districts that save the most money. Who can find management efficiencies? Who can find out how to reduce costs? What are the most innovative ideas? Reward those ideas and emulate them across the state. This is also an area where we're going to have to recalibrate in terms of spending. States spent $52.9 billion last year on education as a total funding. We're going to reduce state spending by $1.5 billion, which, when the state aid is added to the local aid, represents a 2.9% decrease year to year. Now, again, the school districts are going to say, well, we can't live with a 2% decrease. My point is you've had record increases over the past decade. We have a period of recalibration. You're going to have to find ways to tighten your belt. School districts say, I can't find any ways to tighten my belt. I say, let me give you some ideas. First, school districts have reserves that are funded by the state, rainy day reserves. The reserves are funded at $1.2 billion. The school districts have $600 million left over from the federal government last year. That's $1.8 billion. The entire cut the state is making is $1.5 billion. So the reserves and the federal money are more than the state money. Second, maybe it's time to look at the compensation that we pay the management of the school districts. Some school superintendents earn more than $300,000 per year. I'll tell you the truth. I really wanted to be a school superintendent. I applied for that job, as a matter of fact. I didn't get it, so I ran for governor instead. 279 school superintendents, more than 40% of the superintendents in the state receive salaries benefiting more than $200,000. I say, why do we have to pay the superintendents so much money? They say, well, because they have to manage large organizations, they have to deal with the politics of the school board, they have to balance a budget. I said, so do I. And I don't understand why we pay school superintendents more than we pay the governor of the state of New York. I don't think there's really fairness there. If the management of the school is really worried about students, and they're really worried about layoffs for teachers, if there was just a wage freeze for the management and the teachers, just no raises for a period of 1 year, that would save $1.1 billion. Again, the entire cut is $1.5 billion. If teachers paid the same amount for their health benefits that the state employees pay, okay, that's $600 million in savings. And out of the 676 school districts across the state, more than 200 have fewer than 1,000 pupils. And there have only been 4 consolidations since 2000. We're going to have to think in terms of consolidating school districts to find efficiencies. Again, in this area, we're going to have to recalibrate the formula going forward and the spending going forward. I want to increase education funding 4% next year, which is higher than the rate of inflation. It's double the rate of inflation. It shows that we care about education, but it is a sustainable rate of increase. We can pay 4% more next year. We can't pay 13% more next year, and we have to start to live within our means. Final area is something called state operations, which are the agencies, the state agencies. We're going to undertake a comprehensive review of all the state agencies, and we're going to do a reorganization to make sure the state government is working as efficiently as possible. The last time the state government was reorganized was under Governor Al Smith, so it really is due for a reorganization. We're also going to have to save $450 million on the state side, because I wanted to be able to say to the school districts and the local governments across the state that the state government is also doing its part. Local governments will be reduced about 2%. Medicaid will be reduced about 2%. Education will be reduced about 2.9%. We are reducing the state government's budget by about 10%. So if anyone says they can't do it, the state government is leading by example and taking 5 times the reduction we're asking anyone else in the state to take. And I'm proud of that. One of the areas we're going to find that reduction is in our correction facilities. The state operates state prisons, as you know, not from firsthand knowledge, maybe some of you. Probably in the front row. But state operates state prisons. There has been a reduction in the number of people who are in prison. That is a good thing. Demographically, there's been a curve, and there's now a 21% decline in the number of people in prisons since 1999, 14,000 fewer people. It means we have vacancy rates in prisons. It means we can consolidate prisons and find savings. That's what we're going to do. I understand the economic impact of that, and that will be minimized. Likewise with the juvenile justice system. We have a juvenile justice system in this state where we basically will take juvenile offenders and incarcerate them in state-run juvenile justice facilities, which are akin to prisons for juveniles. These are very expensive and have very poor results. Very expensive, about $250,000 per juvenile per year. $250,000. The recidivism rate after a person is put in a juvenile facility, 90%. 90%. So it's exorbitantly expensive to the taxpayer. It's not serving the juvenile. Many people argue it's actually making the situation worse for the juvenile. It's an outdated system. It's a failed system. There are community-based treatment programs that are much better, have higher success rates, and are much less expensive, and we're going to move in that direction. And the main focus, and where I'll spend most of my time, is rebuilding the economy. It's all about jobs, because look, we're going to make these cuts, and we'll be more efficient and we'll be more effective, but this is an expensive state to operate. And the way we're really going to address this issue long term is we're going to grow our way out of it by bringing businesses back to the state, growing businesses that are here, and growing revenues that way. We're going to split the state into regions. That's how economic development happens. I spent 8 years in the federal government under Bill Clinton. I did economic development for 8 years. This is the way successful economic development is being done. Regional plans driven by higher ed, public-private sector partnerships, and we'll be focusing on that across the state. We're going to take all the current economic development programs and focus them through these regional structures. To end where we began, the state is at a crossroads, and there are two roads. One is the road to ruin, and one is the road to recovery, and the choice is ours. It will be hard, because this is a change, and change is hard. And change is an interesting phenomenon, by the way. Everyone says they want change. You ever notice that? You think we need change? Yes, we need change. Everybody says it. In every relationship. You can go to one of your classes today. Do we need change? Oh, yes, we need change. Any relationship, husbands and wives, any morning. We need change. What they really mean is, you need to change. We don't say it that way. We say we, but we don't mean we. We mean you need to change. People themselves, I'm pretty near perfect myself. We want control. We want the status quo, right? Change creates anxiety. Change is hard. Change is hard. To change ourselves, one person, is hard. To change a relationship is hard. To change a collective is very, very hard. To change the culture of a legislature, to change Albany, the culture of that entire system, is very, very hard. But it is doable, and it is necessary, and now is the time to do it. Change comes when the planets line up for change. And this is dramatic. But we have a crisis, and we can actually use the energy of the crisis to make the change. There is nothing in this current situation that wasn't here last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. Not one of these facts is new. The same facts have existed for a decade. And everybody knew them. Everybody knew them. That's why I said it's like the health insurance scam. It was like the Wall Street scam. I discovered scams. I didn't discover anything. I didn't discover anything in the healthcare industry. Everybody knew it. They were all staring at it every day. But nobody wanted to change it. The time wasn't right to change it. Today, the time is right. Because we can't go on like this anymore. Life is options, and we don't have any. Well, we can continue to raise taxes, and that's the way we do it. Throw money at the problem, throw money at the permanent government, raise taxes on the working people of New York. No! I'm not going to do it. I refuse it. But look at what we accomplish if we actually get this budget passed. We will have stopped unsustainable spending. We'll have closed this year's $10 billion deficit. And we will have stopped the cycle and stopped next year's deficit, so we're not having the same conversation next year. We will have closed the deficit with no new taxes or borrowing. We will have begun to redesign the government program so we're actually using the money to help people rather than using the money to fund the permanent government. We will commence real economic growth, which is what this is all about, and we can start to reposition New York nationally. And we'll put up a new sign that says New York is open to business. And we'll say to all those businesses that have been leaving, come back, take a second look at New York. We're not anti-business. We're not the tax capital. We want you here. We want the jobs. We want the growth. And that, my friends, is the road to recovery. And that takes you. That takes you. And that's what I'm really here to say today. And that's what I'm really here to ask. Change is hard. And change comes to a governmental system when the people of the state demand change. People say to me all day long, well, how did Albany get so bad? I say, how did you let Albany get so bad? How did you let Albany get so bad? You voted for those people. You were compliant. You were complicit. Democracy works when people's voices are heard, strong, and true. Well, I'm disgusted with Albany. Well, you're disgusted with Albany? Then you don't have a right to complain. Because change starts with you. Now, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do when I asked you for your vote. But I can't do this alone. I used to say in my campaign, it's not about me, it's about we. I will do everything I can, but this is not just elect a new governor, and the new governor is going to change everything. Because I go to Albany, and I say to the permanent government, and I look at them and I say, we're going to change. And you know what they say? They say, no, you're going to change. They're looking at me saying, we're going to change you. That's what we're going to change governors. The governor's strength comes when the people of the state of New York stand with him. That's where a governor's strength comes from. My strength comes from you. My strength comes when I represent you. And I need your voice heard so people know you want this done. You have all these elected officials in front of you. They listen to you. They don't listen to me. I don't vote for them. They listen to you. And politicians listen very well. Natural selection. Politicians that are hard of hearing the people's voices are not politicians for long. It's Darwin. Look, you'll find it. But you need to make your voice heard, and now, my friends, is the time to do it. Democracy starts with you, especially in Western New York. Fannie Lou Hamer, the great civil rights leader, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of hearing the plight of Western New York and about the good old days of Buffalo and what Buffalo was. We have to start talking about what Buffalo will be. I'm tired of seeing I'm tired of hearing about businesses leaving. I'm tired of seeing young people going to airports to get on planes because they think their future is somewhere else. The future is right here in New York. We have every asset that you can imagine. I spent that time in the federal government. I worked in every state in the United States, literally. I worked in over 600 cities. I've been in every state dozens of times. Nobody has what we have here. No other state has our combination of assets. Nobody has our history, our diversity. Nobody has our workforce. Nobody has our universities. Nobody has our school system. Nobody has our healthcare institutes. We have it all. Nobody can compete with us when we play our best game. The one thing we haven't had is a government in Albany that's as good as the people of this state. We haven't had that until now. We're going to change that. But I need you to do your part, make your voice heard. When you want to get it done, you'll get it done. Let your elected officials know. Now is the time to change New York. You're fed up. It's time to move this state forward. Together we're going to do it, and we're going to make this state not just what it was. We're going to make this state greater than it's ever been, because that's our obligation as parents, as citizens, to leave this place better than we found it. And we're going to leave this place better for our children than we found it. God bless you, and thank you for having me.